how do we know that the disciples, when Jesus died, how do we know they didn't just lie and say, well, hey guys, let's get together. Hey, Matthew, you write that Jesus rose from the dead. And Luke, you come here. You tell people that you interviewed people and that Jesus rose from the dead. And we'll just construct Christianity. We'll break off from Judaism. We'll get power and influence and riches, and we're all going to lie. Go.
Yeah, they would have been really, really bad at that. From the idea of, like, if I'm going to lie to you guys and tell you something about myself, I'm going to be sneaking awesome in my story, right?
Right.
Like, I could tell you all the stuff that I bench pressed in college at football, and I'm just going to lie.
600, right?
600. Look at me right now. You know I did.
Per arm.
Yeah, easily, right? Like, so I'm going to tell that story. The stories that these guys told would be kind of humiliating for some of them.
Very embarrassing.
Like Peter is, what is it in the Gospels where, like, there's one version of when Peter is running and he, like, tells it like, oh yeah, I was running there. But then when John tells that story, it's like, yeah, and I blazed past Peter.
Barely
'cause
whipped
he's
him.
slow, like all that stuff, right? And it's like, Peter didn't quite bring it up that same way, right? And I think that just gives the validity of, like, the stories that are told. Some of the stuff is absolutely humiliating for some of these guys. You fell asleep when Jesus needed you most. You lost
Denied
faith.
Christ, yeah.
Again, denied Christ, like all of those things. But yet that's in the story. They're not building themselves up.
Yep.
And then as a result of them telling these stories, they didn't get riches. They didn't get, they were famous, but not famous probably in ways that was good for their own health and security.
Maybe more infamous.
Yeah, really, realistically. So, like, these guys wound up in prison. They wound up being killed for all of these kinds of things. And the beautiful part about it is this isn't just like, oh, this happened just to Peter.
Yep.
Right? You've got a dozen guys and more that are claiming to have seen Jesus or claiming these kinds of things that are dying as a part of what they believe to be truth. And so, like, their ability to stand up for it, it would just be counterintuitive in a lot of ways.
Yeah. Let me. You just said what they believed to be true, and I would just say what they knew to be true.
Sure,
it was. It was not. Yeah, I think this. They died because of what they believed, and what they had seen and heard.
Right.
I'll bring up community correction again in this point because while we're in a New Testament context, it's still Jews. And so I believe it's 1 Corinthians talks about Jesus appearing to this, and more than 500 of the brothers. Correct me, verse? 1 Corinthians, 2 Corinthians.
Sounds right.
Someone check it.
In the comments, if you
and if you're one of those 500, you're going, well, no, not me.
Yep.
I didn't see that. So that's that community correction that somebody would have.
And again, historical context is really important. So there's the community correction piece in small town, in a small town setting.
Yeah.
So I've said before, when I was in Israel, for perspective, most of Jesus' Galilean ministry took place in an area about from DeWitt to St. John's to Langsburg to North Lansing. It's a small area with a lot of small communities. And so when someone would say, "Oh yeah, this happened," everybody would have said, "Nah." They just would have discredited those stories if they were not true.
In a time when the Romans were looking for things to discredit the story.
Right.
So
the example I always use when someone brings up the question of, well, how do we know they didn't just lie, create this conspiracy, I look at, it doesn't take long for actual conspiracy theories to fall apart. And the example I use is Watergate. So Watergate, if you look in history, it did not take long at all for the people involved in Watergate to be like, I can't take this anymore. Like,
They fold.
It's things are slipping through the cracks. People are cracking here and there, and the story just eventually comes out in a very short period of time. So for this to be where, Paul is sent to different countries, different cities, James is here, Peter's over here, and all of their stories consistently line up to the point that many of them are killed for what they believe. That's just not how conspiracy theories fold out.
Yeah, especially if there's, like Jake pointed out, there is no benefit to them.
Right.
They didn't get money, they didn't get power, they didn't get chicks, they didn't get fame, they just got hurt.
Well, and it wasn't just this community that was talking about it. Right.
Good.
Like, you have people that weren't followers of Jesus who are validating the stuff that the followers of Jesus are saying, or at least their affirmation and their belief that it was like they were this
aware of it. Yeah,
this
sure.
much. The church was really doing this, and it made a stamp on other people through Josephus and so many others that, like, they're acknowledging it. It's not just the church that's acknowledging and saying this, but the rest of the world is acknowledging and validating it as well.
Yeah, the consistent assessment of the disciples from people that are not Jesus followers,
not supporters, not fans.
It's very clear that they believed what they're saying.
Yep.
So Josephus affirms that. Modern day scholars affirm that. Is like, hey, we don't believe this, but it's very clear that the disciples believed what they were saying when they're spreading the gospel.
Which is really an interesting level of arrogance.
Right.
To say the people who were there, they absolutely thought it was true, but we don't think so.
We just don't like it.
Yeah.
That becomes a question of faith.
Right.
Like, I don't want to believe a God loves me or has desires for me, or I'm going to live in ways to please. I don't want to do with any of that. So I just don't believe the Bible.
Yeah.
What's cool, why not? Well, because those guys just lied and made it up. Well, that's not an option. Oh, because it was just a bunch of, well, that's not an option. So it's cool. It's not cool. That's not the right word. There's a better word here. It's your choice to decide, I don't want to have anything to do with Jesus.
Yep.
But you can't do it on the basis that it was fake, that he didn't exist. You got to do it on the basis of don't tell me what to do, I guess.
Yeah, the comforting thing that I always go back to is it's comforting that with almost all of these questions, God has a very clear answer for it. And you're still left with that choice of, even though you have the answer, that we have the manuscripts, we know that it's pretty clear that they weren't lying. We have the understanding of oral history, and then you're just left with that choice. Right. You can still choose. I don't trust it. And that's your choice. But you have the answers in front of you. God's very clear with that, which I think is really cool.